Welcome to the Mystic Podcast. I'm your host, Gillo. Tuning in today from South Carolina is Jeff, a penis restoration specialist, and looking forward to having a brilliant conversation on masculinity and occult machinations of circumcision. So that's definitely a mouthful. We were talking a bit off screen. I saw that the way I found you on Substack is that one, I liked your presentation. I liked your background. Like it reminded me of like a 2000s history teacher. It made me feel very, I don't know, nostalgic and warm. And I liked your presentation. And unlike all of the stylized icons that you see on uh, on Substack, you had like a very straightforward thing, right? And
Yeah.
that, I don't know, it just the authenticity drew me to clicking on your profile. And yeah, then I guess you got a copy of my book, and here
Hell
we
yeah.
are. Amazing.
Yeah, I loved it.
So
Really
thank
good
you.
read. Great job with this.
I really appreciate that. So what can you kind of give me a background of your history? What drew me to my content? How did that happen for you on Substack?
So, yeah, the interview you're talking about was with Dr. Meghan Markle. Rokel, not the royal person. But anyway, she's amazing. She's an ex-clinical psychologist, and she invited me to discuss foreskin restoration. And Megan asked a lot of really great questions, and we were able to cut to the deep-seated matter of circumcision and figure out and talk about uh, why is it going on and the harm it does. Because it's a very serious impact on male sexuality and consequently on the feminine too. It negatively affects our partners just as much as us. But whether it's a girl or a boy being violently cut, um, there's tradition and culture and myths surrounding why it's done. But the real reasons are very sinister. But I call it satanic. And
Okay.
basically, what I mean by that is it's destructive and very violent. So, yeah, I've been doing foreskin restoration for about a year, and there's probably millions of other people doing it. The biggest community of people doing restoration are on Reddit, but I try not to spend too much time on Reddit because it's a bit of a hive mind. And
Okay.
so, yeah, that's a little bit about what I'm doing. And I was exposed to some red pill manosphere stuff probably about 5 or 10 years ago now. I started with The Rational Male by Rollo
Okay.
Tomasi and, all of the mainstream mainstream publications. And I thought it was interesting, but, I didn't put too much thought into it and tried to take the good from the bad and apply it. But I really liked your synopsis of it with the Pillars of Wisdom because
Thank
you
you.
put a humorous basically a humorous spin on all of it and kind of call out the bullshit. So that was really cool to read about, and I
I
learned a
think
lot.
I think kind of the big point, maybe with my book is that the U.S. is going through an economic transition, like the Soviet Union did. Um, and I was born in Russia, and so I watched my parents' generation and my you know millennial Russians really watched their parents waste away in this economic transition. And what I'm seeing happen to the U.S. is that transition. And I'm particularly worried for your population, the white Southerner, which they're genociding with fentanyl and an economic warfare. Um, and I am deeply, deeply worried. And I, from my vantage point, is your best hope is to figure out some kind of remote income and be a white Mexican, which is very similar to a Southerner. I don't know if you know, a lot of Confederates became Mexicans. I don't know
Okay.
if you they they became whenever you see redheaded Mexicans, or there's a lot of white Mexicans, like especially in Sinaloa. They're the descendants of Confederates who didn't like what the Union was doing.
Okay.
And so there is a ranchero kind of boot, grilling meat culture, cowboy hat kind of thing. Um, I was in central Mexico and I saw people wearing cowboy boots uh, and cowboy hats, and it was normal. It wasn't like a political statement, kind of how it is in the south of the U.S.
Right.
And I don't think it's that big of a difference. I think you just kind of learn Spanish, and then you continue on with your way of life. Because from my vantage point, as I guess a former immigrant to the U.S., I really see that your population being genocided by being pulled into these wars, right? So I think white Southerners are pulled into Vietnam, Iraq, stuff like that, right? And that's
Right.
mainly for guys. The white Southerner is the infantryman, the fighting man. But
Right.
but that's and and I know there's like very political left versus right, but I think both of it is a trap.
Yeah.
And so that, because there's a lot of these, um, let's say there was January 6th, where a lot of patriotic Americans were lured into trespassing in the White House, and from there they were put in prison and were deprived of life, liberty, and property, right?
Right.
So I see a lot of these machinations taking place, kind of like in the 1980s Soviet Union. There's a lot of nihilism that my parents were on the receiving end of, and
Mm.
and a lot of my parents' generation drank themselves to death. So I guess I don't know, that's a kind of restoration too. Like there are a lot of conspiracies, and I think maybe that's the lens that you see circumcision through.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure that it is a conspiracy, but the bigger one is like the economic warfare. So um, I guess that if you want more of the outdoorsy stuff, we have that here. Or if you're more of a suburban guy, Mexico is a big place. It's the size of Western Europe, and parts of it are dangerous and parts of it aren't, kind of like the United States. But it doesn't have such a strong negative culture.
Right.
The propaganda isn't as strong, and
Right.
so you kind of have more of an opportunity to be who you want to be. And we definitely saw that during the pandemic. So I guess I don't know if that's kind of my message to your audience, in that
Right.
if you want to preserve your, let's say, Southern values and your Southern Christian values, um, I think you're gonna do a lot better in Mexico, because in the U.S. there's like the ATF. There's a lot of enforcement agencies that prey on the traditional Southerner way of life.
Yeah.
I don't fully understand it because I'm a Russian, haha. But from what I've seen from my friends and my clients is that there's that kind of encroachment. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of my main thing. So, okay, so you read my book. Obviously, some of it's silly, some of it's um, you know provocative. But what spoke to you specifically?
Well, first, I want to comment on the Mexico thing. I am very attracted to that that way of life and that form of government. I think having the cartels keep the government in check is a much better enforcement than having child sex abuse keep our government in check in the United States. So, the United States, I mean, you can call it blackmail, but really the currency of the elite, the currency of the politicians is child sex abuse. And so, growing up in a child rape culture explains why they circumcise infants at the hospital, why they stick blunt objects into the foreskin and peel it off of the glands and forcibly cut it off and have genitally mutilated people because we live in a rape culture here in the United States. So, yeah, I would much rather live under the drug dealers in Mexico.
So, you know, now that we said the quiet part out loud, given that I'm really going to do it today. Um, so thinking how I'm going to go about this. When you look at the Bible, there are the fallen angels, right? Right in Genesis 6. And the fallen angels, I think there's 72 of them, and you have to read between the lines and you have to play a lot of games. But they're the ones who teach humanity all sorts of things,
Yeah,
um, perhaps to corrupt them. And there's a Sethian Gnosticism. So those angels really make their home in Babylon, and underneath the Bible, especially if you read it in its Hebrew, there's a lot of ambivalencies because in Hebrew's I don't know how well you know, but it's written in consonants, and depending on which vowels you put under the consonants, um, you get different meanings. So there's Melech, which means king, and then there's Moloch or Molk, which means sacrifice.
right,
And when you read the text, the vowels aren't there. So God is king or sacrifice is king. You don't
right.
know, and you can reread that phrase in different ways, and that's kind of the most obvious ones. But you really have to be an ancient Hebrew scholar to understand really what's going on. Um, and with the story of Abraham and Isaac, when Abraham is about to kill Isaac, but instead it kills an animal, there's different readings of that one.
Yep.
And I think what's very obvious is that there is the biblical Hebrew script comes from Babylon,
Right.
right? And in Babylon, there's a lot of wizard magic. Like abracadabra is like a Aramaic Babylonian, right? So there's a lot going on there, or let's say the second temple of Judaism is built by Cyrus, who is Persian,
Okay.
and so there's that influence there, right? So it's kind of hard to say what Judaism is, right? In my opinion, it's difficult to understand what is Judaism. And then when you go into Christianity, you're dealing with Rome, with its pagan influence, right, which you see in the Pope, and then in the Russian Orthodox Church, I think maybe you see the Russian pagan the Slavic pagans mixed with Constantinople. So there's really a lot of influences there, and it's hard to say what's what definitively, right? I'm trying to speak in an academic, historic way without offending any of the big religions. But it seems that kind of like with the U.S., right? When you look at the dollar bill, there's a lot going on there,
Hmm.
right? In a Masonic sense, and it's hard to say when you really get to the bottom of it, right? Um, so with circumcision and, let's say, the offering of the firstborn, do you have, let's say, a perspective on that?
Yeah, I do actually. My last interview on my YouTube channel is about deconstructing religion, and I go
Okay.
into detail about this. But basically, circumcision is a enduring substitute for firstborn child sacrifice.
And then, so why are we doing this from a theological standpoint? Do you know, or
So, Judaism is an esoteric, multi-level marketing team for the for the esoteric side, which is the ancient Babylonian Talmud, uh, Baal Moloch religion stuff. So there's levels to it, basically. So you got like soft core and hardcore. So
right?
Judaism is more of the soft core. So they basically stopped the child sacrifice, but kept the child genital mutilation, if that makes sense.
Sure. So are you familiar with Gnosticism, like a Valentinian Gnosticism?
For
Okay,
sure.
so let's say we take a Gnostic anti-Jewish position, and to say that the God of the Bible is a demiurge, right?
I agree with that.
Okay, and then so you're dealing with a demiurge, and then
Right.
you're ruled by archons, which are the
Yep.
zodiac signs, right?
Okay.
And when you look at the Star of David, you're looking at an exchange,
Mm.
right? As above, so below, right? We're going to go in both directions.
Mm.
And so, given that those fallen angels, from a Genesis 6 standpoint, are there's four elements, right? Earth, wind, water, and fire, and those spirits are earth and fire. I mean, no, they're fire and water, right? So they're a passion and they're an intellect, but they lack an emotion and a blood, that they're looking for that water and they're looking for that blood.
Okay.
Because water is emotion, right? So when you
Mm.
sing unto, and so I guess maybe by circumcising an infant, you're going to get that emotional outpouring, obviously,
For
and then
sure.
you're also going to get the blood, right?
Right.
And you can feed it to those archonic entities in exchange for some kind of power, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, and that's why they do the blood sacrifices. Historically, it was a ram or a lamb. Now it's still chickens. You know, they sacrifice chickens for Yom Kippur, and then eventually it led to the purported sacrifice of Jesus for everybody's sins. So we have this theme of redemption through blood sacrifice. But yeah, all this stuff serves these demiurge archon entities or demons. I think on the hardcore side, like Cult of Baal and Moloch and stuff, satanic ritual abuse. This stuff is used to gain demonic powers.
So, okay, I really appreciate you, because like most of my guests, like I'm the out there one, right? but I don't know, I love this. So there's Charlie Kirk, right? I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
you I wrote a piece on Charlie Kirk. I upset a lot of my conservative readership.
Mm.
And there is a book, it's called Sefer HaRazim. It's the Book of Secrets.
Okay.
And it discusses on how to do rituals.
Mm.
So how do you do these rituals? And basically, the Charlie Kirk situation was a ritual.
Uh,
And when you look at Netanyahu, he referred to Charlie Kirk as a young lion.
oh
And in
wow.
the Sefer HaRazim, it talks about you need a lion's heart to perform the ritual,
Oh
right?
wow.
So, and obviously Netanyahu is properly informed, right?
Yeah.
I think he's surrounded by very knowledgeable people who know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And when you look at how his eyes move, I think that's a very intelligent man. I'm not commenting on his morality. I'm just saying you can see he's very intelligent,
For sure.
and that he chose his words specifically. And then later, when his Charlie Kirk's wife, right, did that funeral, it was also kind of a ritual in that sense, right? So I guess that's kind of the blood rituals that I've been uh, seeing contemporaneously. Um, what else? There's trying to think. Well, obviously, we can discuss the pandemic,
Yeah.
um, where there was a lot of games being played, and if you know when you COVID backwards, if you read it backwards, I'm not going to say it to not curse myself, but means demon in
Yeah.
Hebrew. So
Mm-hmm.
there were a lot of these reversal games that they were playing. Um, so okay, so what's your, let's say, religious position? Are you going to identify as a Christian?
No.
Um, okay,
So, I mean, there are like good values and teachings in all religions. That's how they get people to join, you know. But the basic logic of it is usually pretty bad. So, like for example, in Christianity, they teach that somebody else has to die for your sins, and that you need a savior, and that you're weak, you're poor, you're wretched. Um, all these basically like all of these negative things have to happen to other people um, so that I could go to heaven. So logically, it kind of crumbles, in my opinion. I was raised Christian, and I've spent a lot of time deconstructing it, but I think cults and religions are basically the same thing.
so so in in Judaism there's a scapegoat, right? There's an on Yom Kippur there's an Azael scapegoat, right? Where which you got to trick the goat to kill itself by running off of a cliff. I don't know if that's where the scapegoat comes from.
Right,
Um, and obviously, with Judaism, it's very clear with that kind of sacrificing, right?
right.
Um, with Christianity, though, um, there was a lot of martyring, right? There were all the martyrs of Christianity. Um, it could. I want to be respectful to the Christians. You it could be argued that Jesus sacrificed himself, starting this whole martyring thing, or maybe he was sacrificed by the Pharisees, or maybe he was sacrificed by the Romans, right? I don't want to wait on another religion that's not mine. Those are three perspectives, but there definitely is a sacrificing. Within Islam, I think there's a Kaaba, right? And there's a rumor that within the Kaaba are Baal statues of Baal, and that Islam is a neo Baalism,
Okay.
right? Um, European paganism, they're all over sacrificing things. They're doing all sorts of stuff over there. And then on from a Hindu perspective, which is maybe the cleanest form of polytheism there is, right? There's all sorts of stuff that they're doing. There's definitely a lot of rituals there, right? Um, so I would say that you know the pool of those rituals is so strong
Right.
that people receive so much from engaging in those rituals that different cultures end up doing it because there's just so much to gain regardless of the moral cost, right? um, so I don't really see this as one religion versus another. It just feels that all of them kind of feed into the same source.
Right.
um, I I
Yeah.
guess I don't. I think it's good to be able to recognize when you're in the middle of something like this or when you're being pulled into stuff like this,
Right.
because I don't think Charlie Kirk really understood what he was in for, because he looked really he had this kind of patsy innocent look on his face, and he had an Israeli security detail, which I think his mic was wired up with an explosive that blew a hole in his neck. I don't know what your
Yeah, there
theory
was a
is,
lot of unusual stuff going on with the ballistics, and yeah, all of that was very suspicious.
because if he was shot with a rifle, I think a lot of Southerners understand rifle ballistics very well,
Yeah.
and taking a rifle bullet to the neck doesn't look like that.
No.
And I think the American, especially the Southern public, understands that very well because I'm sure they've shot a deer in the neck a bunch of times, and they know what
Right.
that looks like. And shooting a man in the neck can't be that different.
Right.
So I guess there's that. Um, so okay, so did you map a way out of this, um, like religiously, spiritually, or
Well, I kind of deconstructed from religion entirely and just started looking further and further back on where this stuff comes from. And the furthest I took it was astrology. And you had mentioned that earlier. But a lot of this stuff comes from astrology. And it makes sense when the original people, all they could do is look up into the heavens and make up stories and myths based on what they were seeing. And also, they needed a way to track the seasons. Um, and so they had different constellations and gods, basically. And so a lot of stuff gets synchronized and blended together. So, like for example, Baal was the North Canaanite god, and Baal means Lord, and Yahweh was the Southern Canaanite god. And there were only two of like at least a half dozen gods in the Canaanite pantheon. Some of the others were El and Asherah. Asherah was considered Yahweh's wife. So there was a host of gods that were worshipped, and some were merged and some were rivaled. And like some of the prophets in the Bible condemn Baal worship, even though that was commonplace. So, and a lot of most of the Bible was written much after the time period that it's talking about. So, um, obviously, there's going to be corrections and stuff written in there. Um, and like you had mentioned, with the Christianity, there are pagan roots and Greco-Roman mythology in there. Like, for example, there's lots of Dionysus themes into the Bible into the New Testament miracles, like walking on water, turning water into wine. Dionysus was the god of wine, and that's how he showed people that he had divinity, is he would turn water into wine, and that was Jesus's first miracle. So a lot of this stuff gets blended together. I'm sure you know about the holidays like Christmas being the Saturnalia uh, and stuff, and obviously Jesus wasn't born on the winter solstice.
Was he born in April during the
Right,
tax season?
right.
Yeah.
So I think like these are traditions that people used to live by, and now they're being taught literally. And that's kind of my gripe with like organized religion and church, is that they're telling people that this is like literal fact in
Okay.
history, and it's not meant to be received that way, you know?
Well, if you get a bunch of people into a religious building to pray at the same time, you can harvest their psychological energy,
Yeah,
right? So, regardless of whether or not, our thoughts physically exist, right? They can be measured in waves, right?
right.
Like they could put on a measuring helmet, right, and measure those waves, right? So if you could corral enough people into an enclosure and have them produce those waves,
Mm,
you could harvest them, right?
hmm.
And if you're an archon who is feeding off of this energy at certain correspondences, there things could work in that way, right?
Right.
Um, and I think I'm trying to think of how to talk about this without jumping on everyone's feet. But mm, I, it's difficult in that when people are exposed to the hidden aspect of it, um, they really recoil. I guess there's an atheist position saying that it doesn't work, but then there I guess there's an atheist position saying it doesn't work. There's a theist position believing in whatever religion, and then there is a conspiratorial theist position saying that it does work very well, and that's why they're doing it.
Yeah.
Um, so, and I think like when you look at someone like Netanyahu, he, I mean, I don't think he's faking it. I think he really believes in it, and I think he draws power from it, right? And
Yeah. I mean,
I,
he called Palestinians Amalek, which is one of the Israelite enemies in the Bible. So he names his battles after, um, war efforts in the Bible. So they do like believe in this and feed off of it. Um, but I think the Hebrew religion is we know Yahweh is a storm warrior God. So I think that religion has been used to conquer nations and conquer enemies, just like Christianity was used to conquer the Native Americans. They said these people are going to hell, so we might as well try to convert them and kill them. You know, so religion can be a weapon, but you
so are
know,
you are you are you taking a are you taking a it doesn't work position,
I think it
or are
does work.
you
Uh,
okay?
I, I I think it has a lot of psychological. operation.
Okay. And then, like, like if you look at, there's a lot of words that are overcoded, right? So if you look at Israel, it's Isis, Ra, and El, right? So there's Isis, there's Ra, the sun god, and there's El, the Saturnian god, right? And you can kind of like those Skyrim shouts, right? You utter these vibrations
Yeah.
and you put out that energy and
Right.
those correspondences. Um, there is it's I think it's an apocrypha. There's Book of Giants, and they're called Manichaeans, and they're it's the story of the giants in the Bible, the early Bible, and they seem to be really hung up on circumcision.
Okay. I had no idea.
And Moses killed King Og,
Okay.
who was a giant. And in that book, they're really hung up on circumcision and identifying who is and who isn't circumcised.
Huh. Okay.
Um, and it was interesting in that I think the giants weren't circumcised.
Okay.
And from according to some myths, the pagans, um, or the Gentiles, right, worship the Gentiles, worship the giants,
Okay.
and they get their inspiration from the giants in that sense. And there's an issue with the giants, and there's a issue with sexual immorality, in
Mm-hmm.
that the angels created the giants through asexual immorality. And also there's a lot of chimera creatures
Mm-hmm.
that existed um, before the deluge, before
Okay.
Noah's flood,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So it seems to be that there is creation, but that creation also, there's what was intended to be created, and then there's kind of like the remnants, the what was intended to be created, and then what kind of was created as a consequence, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
right? Like the centaurs and all of these griffins and all of these creatures, which could have been a genetic manipulation by these Rephaim.
Mm.
So there's that kind of, maybe a perspective on limiting sexuality. I think within Dionysus, there were people having sex with goats, and there was bestiality, right?
Mm.
So in Judaism, there is a clear prohibition against bestiality.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a clear prohibition on bestiality and incest, it's an indication that that was practiced, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
the Egyptians were incestuous. Why were the Egyptians incestuous? Because the Egyptians were the descendants of giants, and they were trying to backbreed through incest giants.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Mm-hmm.
And then with those animals, maybe they're also trying to backbreed. So there, within sex, from a spiritual standpoint, it's very powerful because you're drawing down souls into
Mm-hmm.
physical incarnation.
Yeah.
Um, and within those texts, like the Talmud, you get into this kind of sexual discourse, which from a Christian standpoint seems really unsavory
Yeah.
on a moral standpoint, right? But from a Babylonian standpoint, they're doing all of this stuff as part of a conjuration ritual,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when you start looking at those satanic orgies and all of that stuff, right, you could see that they're doing that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you could argue that on an Epstein's Island, I think that magic is working just fine as intended
Right.
through a sexual blackmail. So you see
Right.
that it actually is a very powerful magic that's
Right.
taking place. So I guess it's kind of like the nuclear weapon of magic is sexuality, right?
That's a good point.
Um, I, I guess kind of how I'm trying to communicate this is there's there's moral positions, but I think people kind of have to like slow down and before they feel disgusted. People are entitled to feel how they want to feel, in my opinion. But I think we all should figure out what's going on
Yeah.
first. I want to know what's going on.
Right.
Just from a curiosity, like how does it all work? You know, that's where I'm at, and that's where my digging happened. That's yeah,
That's great. Yeah.
yeah.
You,
Um,
you have a gift of tying things together worldwide and through history. That's really neat.
yeah, I'm just over time I'm getting more and more paranoid, and after the September 11th and after the pandemic, I don't want to be pulled into another one, you
Right.
know.
I agree.
So I guess my hope with my book and my reading is to understand it well enough as to avoid it and
Right.
as to avoid being pulled into another one,
Yeah.
right? Like when you start seeing the symbols start happening, when you start seeing all of this kind of, you know, all of these movements, you're like, oh, okay, you're back at it again. Okay, you're gonna head out. Um, so I guess, um, yeah, in Judaism, they're really fixated on circumcision, and they say that if the people who don't go to heaven regrow their foreskin, right? I don't know if you've read any of those.
I didn't know that.
But yeah.
That's
So
funny.
and then when I read that, I was like, how do you go regrow your foreskin? Like, how are you going to do that one? And then they're like, here's how you regrow your foreskin. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So I guess there's that, but there's a lot of sexual morality that takes place because the angels were tempted to have sex with human women, and that's why Judaism and Islam covers their women
Okay.
so they don't get raped by angels,
Huh.
which was a serious thing. But in paganism, in those orgies, I think they're actually trying to get raped by angels.
Hmm.
Because it's opposite.
Okay. I'd like to
Um,
look into that. I was under the impression that paganism had more to do with observing the cycles of nature and worshiping the natural gods as opposed to a monotheistic approach.
well, so
But
that's so.
I
Who
had
are
no
those
idea.
natural gods?
Well, based on the astrology signs, stuff like that.
So, but the astrology signs are the archons, right?
Yeah.
Right. So you
Right.
have Capricorn. So does
Mm.
Capricorn seem like a friendly creature to you?
No.
Aquarius is a sea beast,
Okay.
right? Sagittarius is a centaur,
Right.
right? They're not. Um, there's Cancer as a chariot crab. I mean, you're dealing with these energies, right, that are really potent. So I mean, like paganism. If you want a clean paganism, you can look at Hinduism,
Okay.
right? And they have their statues and they prostrate themselves to their statues. They have like a Dionysian stuff. They do fire stuff, but they have a Kama Sutra, right? So Kama Sutra, that'll be a sexual magic, right?
Yep.
I don't know if Julie Savola wrote about sex magic and how their sex magic works is that they're in a really uncomfortable yoga pose
Okay.
while having sex. And so at the level of your consciousness, you're half in, half out,
Right.
right? So if you've ever held an uncomfortable yoga pose, you could see how you could really start straining
Yeah.
and put yourself into a certain psychological thing, right?
Right.
And then combine that with sex, you could really hit those energies. You know, I and the and that's how that would, I guess, work.
Okay. That's
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting, but it's better if it's interesting from a distance. You know,
yeah. I hate yoga. Every time I've tried it, I'm like, this is the most uncomfortable thing ever.
but I think that's the point. Is to if you're think about this, if you're uncomfortable, right, you're going to start producing certain kinds of energy waves, which are then
Hmm.
boom harvested, right?
Yeah.
Jews are warned against yoga
Hmm.
because you're involved into it in a Hindu worship.
Right.
So it's interesting, and it's interesting in that if you go the pagan route, you're going to get yoga harvested, and if you go the monotheistic Jewish or Islam route, you're still going to get harvested. I mean, it just seems like you're going to go in the same
Right.
path no matter what you do.
And I think, like, historically, this stuff made sense and it kind of was needed, you know? But I feel like humanity can evolve. Like, we can grow, we can become more conscious and shed these burdens. Like, why can't we just be humans, you know? Like, I consider myself a humanist. Like, I don't really concern myself with the etheric and the spiritual and all that BS. You know, like, why can't I just focus on my life, the people around me, learning and loving, you know, the simple things.
Because I think the rewards are so great,
Okay.
and I think that by just pushing someone into a smoldering volcano,
Mm-hmm.
the cash out is just so high
Okay. Yeah.
that it's like Lord of the Rings ring. Like it's just so irresistible to
Right.
just
Okay.
it's like a credit card, right? But instead
Yeah.
of you swiping your credit card, you get some loser to swipe his credit card. Haha, gotcha.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's what it is,
That's a
you
good
know?
analogy. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I think what's interesting about Judaism is if have you ever read like Secret Teachings of All Ages, stuff like that? Have you like Albert Pike? No?
Yeah. Yeah. I've read Albert Pike. Yep.
Okay, sick. So, you know, well, we're gonna do all the conspiracies today, you and me. So
Well, let's not
there's the
forget
whole
the red pill
we're,
stuff
we're,
too.
the what?
Let's touch on the red pill stuff too. I like that.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Well, the idea is that Adolf Hitler was a Zionist, and
Oh,
that
he
the
was for
goal.
sure. Yeah.
Okay, see now we're aligned on that one.
Oh, yeah.
Um, Adolf Hitler was a Zionist, and a lot of the SS Spec Ops guys end up working for Mossad
Okay.
later on.
Okay.
Um, so there's that one, and then Israel is then later going to be sacrificed in the big nuclear war.
Yeah. Yep. The Third
So you
World
got to watch
War.
out. Got to watch out for that one. You know,
Yeah.
so regardless of how annoying Jews are, um, when they get sacrificed in a big nuclear war, you know, because that's what World War III is about. And after that, they put the Luciferian religion, right?
That's right. Yep.
Oh, see, we're aligned, dude. My producer is just so happy with that I found you. So yeah, I guess there's that worldview. What other am I missing? Any conspiracies? No, my producer says I hit all the conspiracies correctly. So okay, I guess we kind of start off with all the most hardcore red pills.
Yeah, we went right into it.
We just did it, which I really appreciate about you. But what I don't know, there's the red pill, which seems like nothing in comparison.
Exactly.
But what do you want to hit on that one?
Well, I thought it was really cool how you kind of undercut the sexual marketplace stuff with financial marketplace changes, and how like feminism kind of changed the family unit. Um, how it pushed out women from their feminine spaces into commercialized capitalist spaces. Um, and also, I thought it was kind of interesting how you talked about the differences in how men and women monopolize space. Um, like how,
Oh, yeah, how we can claim space symbolically, right?
right? Because I always
Yeah.
wondered, like, why do women put up signs on the wall that says like "eat" or "kitchen" or "family"? I always wondered, like, why are these signs up, these labels? But as you explained it's more about their signaling their values and virtues, whereas men view space as productive or utilitarian and functional. So, like, whereas a man might use his kitchen table for a project, his wife might be super pissed off because that's dedicated only for like family dinners. You know what I mean? So the psychology behind that is very fascinating.
So yeah, there was Lefebvre, right, and it was theory of space. But I guess maybe to kind of go back to our spiritual conversation, right? You're in a spiritual war for space,
Yeah.
right? If you're married,
Yep.
um, and you need to, I guess, at the domestic front, you need to fight for your space. I have a very male presenting black leather couch. Um, but I guess at a civilizational level, you need to spiritually dominate so you can maintain like big other or control of the symbolic network, right? Um, so I guess kind of like if you're in a spiritual war, you're always going to get lured back into using those tactics, right?
Hmm.
I don't know what your position is on that one.
It makes sense. But yeah, the monopolization of space has changed a lot. Gyms used to be a place where men could, talk, have locker room talk with their mates and pump irons and let explicits fly. But now it's a place for women to show up in half naked clothing and film themselves working out. It's totally,
There
uh,
was this movie was called The Wrestler. I don't know if you've seen it, but I used to go to a Gold's Gym in North Hollywood, and what makes a Gold's Gym is people will sell you steroids,
mm,
drugs. In that, when people talk about locker room talk, the locker room talk was the sale of anabolic steroids
Okay.
from Mexico. It was a site of commerce,
Mm-hmm.
and as a personal trainer I talked to personal trainers from the 80s and 90s.
Mm.
Half of their business was selling steroids,
Okay.
and in conjunction with those steroids, there's obviously amphetamines, right? Because when you take a lot of steroids, your body's growing, so you're tired, you're sleepy because you're growing. So you might want to. This isn't a recommendation. Offset that out with amphetamines. So when you look at the '80s bodybuilders, it's just a cocktail of drugs, right?
Right.
So I guess what I'm saying is that in the same way that religion has a dark underside, like an exoteric kind of side, obviously bodybuilding does too. Um, and for me, that dark underside is unavoidable.
Okay.
In that, like if you look at Planet Fitness, which is to say a Gold's Gym without the steroids,
Mm-hmm.
it's just not the same.
Right.
Because if I'm working out and there's a guy who took everything and he's sweating all over the place and he's going for it, he's kind of like a shaman that brings energy into the room,
Yeah.
right?
Interesting. Yeah.
And like when you look at religion without that kind of power center of the sacrifice of the blood, it's it just it feels like it's not. It's like a vegetarian Thanksgiving. It's just
Right.
not there. So there's a certain surplus that's necessary, and I think because things just kind of don't work without it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's why all the invocations happen, right? Like, I mean, like, look at Israel. Like, without the whole Freemasonic plot, it's just a lot of expensive air conditioning
Hmm.
in the desert. If there's no, I don't know, like there kind of has to be okay. Like, I used to know a guy from the South, and he used to like Southern music, like the 1980s hair metal, right? But that was all funded by drug money,
Hmm.
right? So they would fund. I'm making a Pharisee argument right now. I'm just gonna. So they would fund those concerts so they could sell drugs.
Okay.
Like she's my cherry pie and all that stuff, and like
Yeah.
like the big. So a lot of our culture is downstream from narco trafficking,
Right. Okay.
right? And a lot of wrestling is downstream from anabolic steroids, right? And our
Okay.
religion is downstream from Orcon worship.
Right. Okay.
So I guess regardless of how fucked up it is, it's just it feels very vegan without it.
Yeah. Yeah.
If does that um and so I guess instead of doing a full blown child sacrifice, it's like, okay, well, you can just have the foreskin. You know what I mean? Or
Exactly.
instead of having a full child sacrifice, you're like, okay, I'll just kill a goat. You know.
Right. Right.
Um. So yeah, I don't know. It just to me it feels like the vegan option doesn't fully get it done
Yep.
in that sense. And when you look at vegans, it's just kind of shitty,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Um. And yeah, if I think that's the best argument that I can make for the other side. That's not completely like evil wizard.
Well, no,
Um,
that's genius. I mean, that's why I really enjoyed your book because you have such a good ability to break things down in a
okay,
coherent
but
way.
speaking of evil wizards, so I I think my book is a tarot card deck. Did you figure that one out?
You mean with the imagery and the illustrations?
Yeah. So there's
Yep.
all of the astrology or archons, right? And then you can see how they all interact to
Yeah.
form different energies, right?
Here,
So
here's Netanyahu.
yeah, and I guess that's the lion. Um, but I guess that like I mean, if I think a symbolic literacy is important,
Yeah.
regardless of what kind of position you take. I obviously have a Babylonian cover. I thought that was really fun. I got
Hmm.
some dragons. I think given that we're in the end times, I think we should at least understand what's happening.
Right.
Let's just figure out what's happening because
Right.
I feel like it kind of sucks to be in an apocalypse without really like getting like imagine if you're like in a Harry Potter and you're like who's Voldemort. It would really kind of suck in that sense. Like if I'm in a Harry Potter world, which it really feels like I am, I want to know who all the main characters are.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like can the Illuminati just give me the plot line? You know what I mean? Like I just want to like I'm like oh okay like oh okay oh it's that.
Yeah.
I feel like when I die and go to heaven, I want it explained to me. Like I want like you
You
see what
want
I
the
mean? Like
story.
we're kind of being pulled through a thing. It'd be like if you're in a Harry Potter. I don't know if you watched Harry Potter, but if you're in a Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings, and it all ends and everyone's celebrating, and you're like, wait, but like Sauron was who though? Voldemort was like who? Oh, he wanted. Oh, okay. You know.
Hmm.
Um. So I'm trying to figure it all out,
Oh,
just
me
at an
too.
academic level.
Yeah.
Um. So I guess that I have like the Beast of Revelation. It's kind of like an apocalypse thing. We're
Hmm.
doing a lot. We're doing the Sun and Gemini, Gemini's duality, which can be very evil and dark. So I guess that. Yeah. Any big thoughts as we let's say wrap it up?
Well, I would just recommend people to read it. Read your book. I really
Thank you
enjoyed it.
so much.
Yeah. No, I'm glad I bought it.
Thank
It was
you.
cool.
Thank you. But yeah, I guess yeah, I don't know. I don't know, I'm just really happy that I had you on my show, and I'm really happy that people are waking up and at least
Yeah.
figuring out what's going on. Um, yeah, but I'm really worried about the U.S. and
Hmm.
and digital currency and those games that they're going to be playing, and Mark of the Beast, and all of this stuff.
Right.
So I think it's I think my book is a step in the direction of figuring it all out.
For
And
sure.
I don't know. I just really appreciate how you're figuring it out. I really like that. I think that's so amazing.
Yeah. I mean, my thing is just about learning. I have an addictive personality and I've had all types of bad vices, some good vices too, but I'm addicted to learning. And I also don't get offended by opinions. So I'm talking to you today, and you're from the manosphere and red pill, and I might interview a feminist next week. So I like to hear different. different angles on things. And I never really root myself to my beliefs because I'm willing to change my mind based on new information. And I encourage everybody to be willing to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, a lot of their feminism is very Lilith like,
Right.
and they Lilith is a demon that sought equality with man and wouldn't let man mount her or be on top of her.
Mm.
And then she cursed God because by invoking God, you gain some kind of powers.
Hmm.
So, and in the Quran, it says that one of the things that Satan does is he separates man from woman. That's his strongest power.
Well, that's what circumcision does too.
So there you go, right? So I guess there's
See, when people, I'm sorry to dive
that's
back
fine.
into this, but with circumcision, because the penis is very tight when erect, the man has to thrust very far back and forth to have any sensation. Okay. But with an intact foreskin, he has to move very little to have that rolling, gliding action. So he stays very close and connected to the woman.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I see because I've never heard a pro foreskin regrowth argument before. Like I know maybe from a religious standpoint, but I've never heard it because I am incredibly lazy. And if I could just do less sexually and
Mm-hmm.
then go to sleep faster,
Yeah.
bing bong.
Mm-hmm.
So that is that is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just really appreciate you and just how like straightforward you are, and how I don't know. It's just I just like to look the presentation. I'm just a fan.
Well, I admire your bravery and
Okay.
everything for moving to Mexico and starting your life there. I mean, that is really cool, dude.
So I guess to kind of close it out, my advice is to figure out if you could expand on your penis regrowth situation, figure out remote income. You're
Mm-hmm.
only going to need about $2,000 a month, something like that.
Okay.
From there, I think that things are getting more and more expensive in South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Um, from there, you could take your dollars from your penis ministry and really live better, and I know what happened in the Soviet Union, the post-Soviet time, and I really don't want to see that happen to Americans. So if you can
Mm-hmm.
expand on your, penile regrowth thing, get people in on it,
Mm-hmm.
create webinars,
Yeah.
have people pay you for penis regrowth coaching,
Yeah,
then
that's a great idea. I
I
started my channel trying to do that.
okay,
Um, but it's actually kind of rare for somebody to want to try it. I mean, I have three younger brothers, and I have friends who I've even bought devices for and give them
okay,
all the tools and stuff. And most people are kind of hesitant, and I think, and even guys who are circumcised, like they defend the practice. They say, I'm fine. My sex life is fine. I don't have any problems from it. So I think a lot of it is the ego guarding. They don't want to admit that they're less than. They don't want to admit that they're somehow sexually inferior to an intact male, right? So people have a big obstacle in getting over their ego and admitting that something happened to them that's very painful and traumatic.
I think what makes your argument easier to make is what we saw with vaccination,
Okay.
and I think we see a lot of very similar logic with
Okay.
with the vaxxed population.
Okay.
So I think that's under normal circumstances, you know, I think your argument would be harder to make.
Right.
But I think if it was when I hear it, I hear my own anti-vax argument, and I'm hearing a lot of very similar linguistic structure there.
Okay.
So I think that's really interesting. And then I think with a lot of this neo-paganism, I think that's another angle to push it, right? Because they're rebelling against Judaism, they're rebelling against monotheism,
Right.
and that is one of the biggest rebellions, is to regrow your foreskin, right?
Yeah.
So I think if it's packaged in that way, and I don't know, I like your, with like, I think my red pill stuff is more mainstream, but what I like about you is that, like, you're further out there, but you're on target in that sense, right? Like, you're kind of ahead of the times in that sense. So that's what I don't know. I like your directness. I don't know. It's great. It's the authenticity for me is great, and I really really respect it. And I just sometimes I talk to people and they feel inauthentic,
Mm-hmm.
whereas I don't know, you're just really really good like that. So, but yeah,
Well,
thanks so much. I'm really glad you enjoyed my book. I wrote it for you. I wrote it for your audience. I wrote it for your demographic, and I really wish you luck in your foreskin regrowth ministry.
thank you so
And
much.
if you can make Facebook ads and get people to buy in on that kind of stuff, then hit me up and I'll help you relocate to Mexico.
That would
And
be great. I'd love to visit and check out the scene and see what it's
It's
like.
really amazing. We have a lot of amazing colonial architecture here. It's really beautiful. It's really hot, but
Okay. Well, I love it hot, and I definitely like to come visit soon. So I'll keep in touch. Thank you
keep
for
in
having
touch.
me.
Send me some messages. Thank you so much for all of your help. I really recommend you. I love your message, and have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it,
All right.
Gilo. Talk later.
Bye.